is kind of, especially today, a kind of over abused thing. I mean, we all get just too many emails every day. It's kind of like back in the day, because I'm a little older, I'm 45, you used to get so much junk mail. Every time you'd go to your mailbox, it's all junk mail and you just throw most of it out. Then as the world changed and as marketing changed, you get less and less mail. So now when you get something in the mailbox, most people, they actually open it and read it because it's just not the norm. But how do you get around that in today's world, 2023, where everybody is sort of sick of emails, especially sales copy emails? We all get them. We get so many of them. I rarely open any of them. Like, how do you get around that? Because if you're having this much success in that email, I mean, your name is email paramedic. Like, what are the things people are missing in that?
Yeah, so you just have to, it's really funny because you just have to treat email not like it's email, right? Because most people, when they're on social media, they're like showing their lives and they're doing all these cool things and they're being very personal and showing you into their life. And then all of a sudden they go over to email and then they get super corporate and they sit up straight and they put their suit on and they start typing and it just loses all its personality. So when you get an email that you don't like, it's probably because they're either pitching you or because they're just not like treating you like they would on social media, for example, or in person, right? Like I said, a lot of what I've done is just based off of like the things I learned in baseball and like hard work and like talking to people and just like taking all the extra steps I need to take to make things happen. So just really being able to understand other people is the main thing, right? So if somebody is opting into my list, first of all, the offer is more important than anything else, right? So even if it's just something free or it's something paid, like the very first email, I'm going to give them exactly what they got. Plus, I'm going to over deliver because that's always what I've done. That's always what I'm going to do. So that's the first thing. So the person gets the thing that they wanted and they're like, wow, this is even better than I thought. Then the next email, I'm not going to try to sell them something, at least not yet, right? So I have to like get them to understand me and who I am and sell myself and just tell my story. And I just told my story. But being able to like do that in a typed form, there's so many people that reply and they're like, oh my gosh, like, thanks for sharing that. That was cool. And when you keep doing that, people get to know you and they like you, right? So like whether it's social media or podcast and email, you just really need to be a person. And we also do other things too, like, hey, first name, what's your number one question right now about email? Reply and let me know. So if they reply back with a question, we reply back with an answer. And like that's another thing that most companies don't do. So just being able to do stuff like that and let people get to know you before you ever try to sell them something, or if they did buy something, before you ever try to upsell them. So it's really just like telling weird stories too. So my best email ever, it's not about email. It's about the day my grandfather died. And I just told this really personal story about like how I was traveling and he was basically being put on his deathbed and I flew home to be with him for 11 days in hospice. And I like talked about God to him, like while he's on his deathbed, and he died 15 minutes later. Like that's what people realize, like, hey, this is another human talking to me. This is not a company. So I talk about that. A lot of people reply back and they're like, hey, I had a very similar experience with my grandfather, with my parent. A lot of people can relate to that. So I just tell those stories, and I have some other like funny content too that I put up on YouTube where a couple of guys from Europe ripped off one of my offers and they had a sales call. So I booked a call with them and I jumped on with them and they didn't recognize it was me, the guy that they stole from. So I posted that on YouTube and that went pretty viral as well. So just different things like that, and just being a human and being a personality.
So with your email campaigns that you run for other people, not just yours, what is your average click rate, like, or open rate, I guess would be the terminology?
Yeah, so it's a little bit less about what is your exact open rate. I mean, for my list personally, we've got like 16,000 people on it, and it's typically going to be around 30%. Now, with iOS 15, it's probably a little inflated compared to how many people actually open it. But as long as you're hitting a minimum of like 20% right now, you're going to be fine. It's just making sure that you're kind of like above that minimum so Google doesn't start to throw you into spam or promotions or wherever. And then obviously like Yahoo and Hotmail, they have their own numbers as well. They're a little more strict, but in general, 20% is a really good number to be at. And then as far as click rate, that varies a ton as well, right? Because if I tell like a really long story, whether or not I sell something, well, obviously you have to have a link to get a click rate, but if I put like in the PS or at the very bottom of a long email, the click rate is not going to be that high, but the intent of every person clicking is going to be higher.
Mhm.
Whereas if I just tell a very short email and just like, hey, I discovered like 3 steps that'll help you make more money with email. You won't believe what number 3 is. It doesn't have to do with how you write or, you know, how many people are viewing your email, et cetera, and then drop the link. A really short, clicky email like that, it's going to have a lot more clicks, but the intent of those is going to be a little lower. So it's just more so understanding, what your goal is for the email. But in general, I would say on the list of like 15 to 16,000, if on the high end, we'll get like 600 clicks, and on the low end, maybe like 100. So it just really depends.
Hmm. And it's a pretty impressive income, and since this is the Money School podcast, I always like to talk a little bit about like how you do that, because there's other people listening to this. Maybe they're starting something new. Maybe they've got a unique, superpower or something that they're really good at, and they just don't know how to get out there and get the customers. It's one thing to have a cool product, a cool idea, email paramedic clearly, works. So that's the first thing, but how are you're selling it? You had mentioned you go out to events. Can you elaborate a little bit about how do you do that? Like you're going to masterminds? Are you paying to be part of masterminds? You just going to small little meetups? Like, what is your strategy when it comes to marketing what you do and how you get the clients?
Yeah, so mainly events, right? So like that's the main way that I've like networked in this community. And I would say the community that I'm in is like just the general like copywriting and email community, which is like very heavy on Facebook. And everybody has like a different community that they're in. So maybe like, for example, if you were in like the NFT space, like Twitter is obviously the best place to go for that, or like Discord. You just have to find out where your people hang out. Now, those are two very extreme examples between like email people on Facebook and NFT people on Twitter. But wherever you are, you're probably somewhere in between there, right? You just have to find your people. And literally, the first thing is, even if you don't have money to go to events, post online, right? So like give actual value. A lot of people talk about value posts, but there's 2 types of value posts that work. So one is telling stories like I did. If I go in a Facebook group and tell my whole story like I just did right now, or even if this was like 2 years ago and I had just like started to have a little bit of success, or I didn't have a lot of success yet, and I told like the hard part of the story and about like how I'm planning to come up and like, hey, like watch out for me over the next 2 years, people respect that and they appreciate it because everybody can relate to a hard time in their life. So even if you're like brand new, literally just going in groups online, whether it's a Facebook group or some kind of other community, a forum, whatever, like literally just posting and like being visible. Because if you don't have enough money right now, it means you haven't had enough conversations with people. That's just the truth. And a lot of people, maybe some people listening are like, well, I've posted before. Well, the truth is you haven't posted enough, or you haven't hit the nail on the head with your post. So the first kind of post is the like story that I just mentioned. The second post is a legitimate value post. So what's something that most people in that group do not know? And yeah, you don't have to give away like your full like, $1 million idea, but at the end of the day, an idea is an idea and executing it is executing it. So if you go out and you post exactly how to do something that audience wants to know how to do, a lot of them they're not going to say, oh, let me go do that right now. They're going to hit you up and say, hey, can you do that for me? And that's how it works. Even better in person, right? Because you can go and you can talk to somebody face to face. It's way better that way. Now, whether I'm talking with somebody face to face or I'm talking to them online, the main thing that I do, let's just say online, for example, is I make a Loom video for them. So what I'll do is I'll go to their website, I'll opt in for their email list, I'll get in a few emails, and then I just go into my inbox and I hit the record button and I show them. I'm like, hey, just opt in for email list. Here's the first email I got. I would probably change this thing and this thing right here because it's causing X problem and Y problem for you. Oh, and by the way, you're in the promotions tab or you're in the spam folder. And that's exactly how I fix that. If you're interested and you got a lot of value on this video, I put my calendar link below. Talk to you soon.
It's a very
Literally
smart
2 minutes.
idea.
Yeah. So that's what I do. And then in person, if I'm talking to somebody, first thing is I always get to know them personally. I never say, what do you do? I'm always the person, like, I want them to ask it because I don't want to be the person who asks that. So then when they ask, like, I don't come off as needy at all. I'm like, oh yeah, so I run this company called Email Paramedic. We basically solve email deliverability problems and run your entire email list for you. And not everybody, but the right people will be like, oh, deliverability, I need help with that. So then I say, okay, what's your website? I'll opt in for your list. And then I make a Loom video for them a couple of days later after I get some emails. So that's how I network with people online and at events. And if you do that enough times, like, you will make money.
That's really smart. Folks, I want you to really pay attention to something he said there, and I hope you all picked up on that. What he does first is gets to know the people, goes to their website, and just goes into what they're already doing, which at that point, the customer, the person he just met at the event or on the Facebook group, they don't think they have a problem. In most cases, they don't know they have a problem. Okay. They might think, not many people are opening our email, but they don't know that their email's landing in spam or junk folders. So what he does is he goes in and just goes through the process. And then he then sends a Loom video, but that Loom video is literally solving that person's problem. You see, the secret to making 2 million, 2.5 million isn't having the best product, isn't having the best sales team or any of that stuff. It's having the best ability to solve a problem. But if you can't solve a problem or let your customers know that you have the capacity and the ability and the willingness to solve the problem, then you're never going to make any money. Everybody makes such a big deal out of their product and what they do. And I'm this and I'm that. And the pictures with the fancy cars, none of that matters. When you go in and you do what he just said and you solve a problem, that matters. Because most people, once they get that Loom video, they're going to watch it and be like, oh, wow, I never knew. And the first thing they're thinking is they're busy. All business owners are busy. And they're thinking, gosh, I need to fix this. I need to do that. And they don't know how, or they don't have the time to do it. And a lot of times they don't have somebody on their team that has the time to do it either. So the first thing they do is they go, Troy, is that something that you can help me with? Boom. Now, because he solved the problem, they're willing to hire him to then facilitate that and continue that problem solving.